Hey.
Hello.
Hi, Judy.
Yeah, we're back again.
After 3 whole minutes,
Yes.
we've come back.
Seemed like a lifetime.
We said we would, and
We got here.
we can be
Yeah.
trusted. Right. So in the last half hour, spent a little bit of time just doing some stage setting about the current issues. At least according to some people.
Right.
Maybe what I might do is just because I'd like to get into a little bit about the elections and the candidates and
Yes.
slates and whatnot.
Yes.
There are a couple of just quick ones that I'm just sort of looking here in terms of kind of big, serious issues. One of the things that was actually really novel, I don't know if you were participating in the participatory budgeting.
No, I did. No, I only did it online, but I know people actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was actually, I did not, I made a personal choice not to be involved in making it happen.
Right.
Because I wanted other people
Sure.
to get involved and
Right.
not be so darn negative and
Right.
get into something really positive.
Right.
So this thing called participatory budgeting.
Yes.
I think it was Leland Chung was the one who originally put an order calling for it to happen, but other people have floated the idea.
Yeah.
And it was really, really well managed out of the budget office and the finance department of Cambridge. There were a lot of people involved, and I think they started off with about a kitty. They said we are going to give the people in the city. You can submit some great ideas. We'll vet them to some degree in terms of feasibility.
First, get what are people right?
Yeah, because if
that's
somebody
right.
says, we'd like to build a spacecraft to go to Mars.
Yeah, not a good
I
idea.
said, don't do that. No. But I'd like to, for example, my idea, I didn't do it. Unfortunately, I was going to say we're going to build a miniature golf course in Kendall Square. I'll put that
Seriously?
in next. No, I'm going to put it in next
Oh,
year.
okay, all right.
Right. But anyway, some people had some pretty good ideas. Wireless hotspots, books
Right.
for the community learning center, or computers,
Public toilets.
toilets. Actually, that's
Yeah.
So it was about a $500,000, very small, relatively small amount, $500,000, and people put in all sorts of ideas, and then there was an actual public voting process.
Right, which you could do online.
Yeah,
That's what I did.
you can do it online. You can show up at various places. I
True.
voted over at the main library.
Right.
They had an external organization sort of help facilitate that to
Right.
make sure it was all, it wasn't in the bag.
Yeah, right. You can only vote once.
Yeah, and in the end, they ended up apportioning, I think, more like $530,000 because there was there was an extra idea, and they said this is good, and people wanted it, so they just did it.
Do you remember what got the most votes?
I should, but I don't.
Okay.
And I have not at all looked at the ideas that have been generated so far this year. I think the deadline for submissions of ideas has already passed.
Oh, so it's each year it's going to happen.
Yep, every year.
Oh.
And the thing is, it was done originally as a pilot, so it could have been a one-off and never been done again.
I think you'd want to wait to see if they actually did what they said they were going to do the first
year. Well, that's what people said. Is they said, well, now we voted for this, we're not going to ever see it, though, right?
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure.
I'll have to look that up. Maybe we'll come back at some point and say, okay, this was what's voted on, and here's the progress on this.
Well, the truth is, the city takes on various improvements in parks and playgrounds and streets and roadwork, and they do a lot of these things every year anyway.
Right, but these were unusual. The public toilet, I don't know.
Well, we already had one that's already being constructed now in Harvard Square.
And that was not part of this.
Well, no, it was not. It predates it. It's just, so this was one for Central Square.
I didn't know that. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
and then also something about a Wi-Fi.
There's Wi-Fi.
But that's a whole other issue.
Yeah.
Which people are taking.
So there was a list of maybe 7 different items, but it was an interesting exercise in citizen participation.
I think it's great.
And in my, sometimes I'm probably the number one downer on a lot of citizen participation because so much of it is negative around Cambridge. So to me, this was the antithesis of that.
Yeah.
This was positive,
and it
constructive.
Used social media. Yeah,
it uses everything. It was a wonderful initiative. I was suspicious at first, and I'm totally turned my head around. I thought it was great. And Richie Rossi, the manager, said, "Hey, let's do it again." Louis DiPasquale, the treasurer, said, let's definitely do it again. Gina Franconi is going to, I think,
so what stage is it now? You can submit ideas?
I think the ideas may have already been in there. Now they have a committee of people that are vetting the ideas and consolidating them.
Okay, and then it'll be...
And then it'll basically be put up...
I'll probably find out about it
probably,
then. Somehow I missed that other part.
I'm going to guess and say maybe in January, but it could be sooner, it could be later.
Sure.
And then people will get to vote on it again. I haven't looked at the ideas, but I think it's a great exercise and people should embrace it. Definitely a wonderful, wonderful thing. So anyway, that's a real positive thing.
Definitely.
Participatory budgeting. I think I mentioned at the last half hour at the very end the sort of the very, very contentious Normandy Twining
Yes.
zoning petition. Whenever anything actually gets built, we'll see. Another thing that sort of emerged as a big matter, which is still unsettled, was for years when we talked about housing in Kendall Square, people said, well, the ideal place would be what they call the Volpe site, the site of the
Right.
Volpe Transportation Center, but they'll never move. No, then
Yeah.
they turned around and they said,
Yeah.
hey,
We don't
I'll
want
tell you
any-
what,
yeah.
if you build us a new building, we'll move into the new building, and then we'll free up this land here for housing and other purposes as well, as
Wow.
long as it's a break-even deal, so that
Okay.
basically they get their building, the proceeds of the rest of the deal cover the cost of the construction of the building. They said, we'll do that. I never thought it would happen, and it seems to be happening.
So where
but
is their building? Where did they build?
well,
it?
it's not being built, but the thing is that it's sort of like a kind of, you need to be a bit of a fortune teller to know how to
Mhm.
write the zoning, because the zoning doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
I mean, there's existing zoning, but it's totally inappropriate. So they have to craft zoning that basically allows enough development potential to happen
Yeah.
to actually generate the costs, the money,
To make it.
to build the building,
I
and
see.
so that nobody's losing their shirts on
Huh.
this stuff. And they also want to make sure that there's a certain amount of open space, and that's been contentious, Where should the open space be? How much housing? How much
Right.
commercial or research and development potential should there be in order to generate the income to cover things? Some people say, well, we should just build all housing and lose our shirts on it. Well, I don't think that's good
Yeah.
management, but
No.
but anyway, it's like you don't really know what the bidder really wants, so you're sort of
Mhm.
trying to guess your zoning. It's a very unusual backwards type of process, but that's unresolved. In my opinion, I think there was some recommendations, but unresolved. But it is on a time frame. Like people have said, sort of in a
So
kind of
what group is most,
Well, I
involved
like to
with
say
this? Is it the East Cambridge
normally it's the
people,
East
or-
Cambridge planning team
Yeah.
would be sort of the go-to neighborhood
Mhm.
group. But the thing is, the scale of this is so significant that it
Yeah.
was a legitimate citywide concern.
Okay.
But also, the truth is that it's a federal property right now, and right now federal property, they're not subject to any zoning at all. So they could do whatever they wanted if they wanted to. So it's a
Mhm.
matter of crafting zoning
Yeah.
for the area that's
Interesting.
that's viable and
Yeah.
workable. So that's a big deal that still needs some
Hmm.
going over. We'll see how it goes. So anyway, so to bring it right up to the current date, there's people continue to talk about affordable housing programs of every sort. There's some interesting new zoning petition from Patrick Barrett, who owns property right over there, which would allow for accessory use, which actually has the promise of generating a lot of housing just out of basements and making in-law apartments, things that are not currently easy to do
Huh.
under the zoning without a big
Accessory.
variance,
That's interesting.
to
Yeah.
facilitate some of those
Uh-huh.
uses. The interesting thing about the Barrett petition is that it actually got support from people on all extremes, which in
That's-
Cambridge is
that's near
miraculous.
impossible.
Yeah.
So like the Cambridge Residents Alliance?
Yeah, people who are associated with
Better
Cambridge
Cambridge,
Residents
yeah.
Alliance, as well as people from Better Cambridge, who are a little more pro-development.
Right.
The people signed that petition are actually all over,
Huh.
all over. So I thought that was a
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
development. But
So,
we do have an election
yeah,
coming up.
right.
So we thought
Yeah.
that maybe just getting into a little bit of it, not, we're not here to kind of push candidates or whatever, but just so much to sort of, more than anything else, just to let people know where we're at here.
Yeah. But I
All
think
right.
if we can explain this whole emergence of the slates and.
We can definitely do a little bit of
It's
that.
definitely confusing, or not
Yeah.
confusing, but, people are saying one thing about them and.
Absolutely.
Set the record straight.
Yeah. Now, if you just happen to be an average voter in Cambridge,
Mhm.
and you just want to know, well, who's running?
Yeah.
One of the things that I do is I maintain this thing called the Cambridge candidate pages. There are other ways of finding out about candidates. This is
Sure.
not one-stop shopping, absolutely,
Right.
but it's actually pretty
But the
good.
candidates actually submit this material to you. And
Yes.
you don't edit
Yeah.
it or anything. You you just,
Right, so the
So she-
URL is vote.cambridgecivic.com.
I think it'll show up if.
It'll
we,
probably show up. We'll
should we
call it
just,
up here. We're gonna actually try and do some fancy
right,
technology
yes,
here.
so you can see it.
And if
So,
the technology fails, I'm gonna have to sing and dance, and you don't want
Right.
that.
So I just
So,
press this, right?
I think,
It's
yeah,
already
because that's
on
already
preview.
chosen, so we can
There we
preview
go,
it. There
there
we
it
go.
is.
All right. Now, the candidate pages, we may have to do a little scrolling. I always get a little
Yeah.
confused on that. But if you just were to just look at it, what you'll see here is that there's actually 23 candidates for 9 city council seats. Well, maybe we can
Right.
kind of run through a few of them a
Right.
little bit, but maybe we'll save a lot more of that till
So
next
those
time.
are all the city council candidates there.
Yeah, so there's 34 of them. you know.
34? Oh, you
Excuse
counted-
me, excuse me.
Right.
23.
Yeah.
23 running for city council.
And do you want us to just briefly look
Well,
at
actually,
the
I tell you what, let's-
school committee?
Let me just sort of run through their names sort
Okay,
of
right
quickly,
now.
and then we'll
Okay.
say maybe a few things, but,
All right.
maybe not. We'll see. So running for city council is incumbent Vice Mayor Dennis Benzan is seeking his seat.
Mm-hmm.
Incumbent City Councilor Dennis Carlone.
Mm-hmm.
Incumbent Leland Chung.
Mm-hmm.
Challenger Mike Connolly, who for the last term was actually the aide for Dennis Carlone. Kim Courtney, who is a lawyer, lives on Ware Street. Mariko Davidson is a new candidate.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I get the name right. Plinio DeGois.
Huh.
All right, it looks like DeGois, but it's
Yeah,
DeGois.
DeGois.
That's how he
Okay.
pronounced it at one of the candidate forums. So he's got a green rainbow connection, I
Okay.
believe.
All
Then there's Jan Devereaux from Lakeview Avenue. Xavier Dietrich, who's actually the partner of Kim Courtney. They have the similar
Oh,
looking
that's
pictures.
the,
Also of
okay.
2 Ware Street. It's actually kind of a curiosity worth
Yeah,
noting.
how can they both be running?
Well,
They
because you
seem
can
to be
run.
running as one person from
They're
when I went
running
to the
as a 2-person group.
Slate,
Yeah,
like a
yeah. Well, that's a whole nother story.
Okay,
I'm going to
all right.
avoid saying too much on that.
Okay, all
'cause
right, that's good.
There are some personal things
Sure,
there.
yeah.
But it is kind of curious if you look at. There's also Marika Davidson also lives at 2 Ware Street, apartment 411. So there's
Oh,
actually
Ware
3
Street.
candidates
Yeah, that live in that
from the
building.
same floor of the same building.
Oh, the same floor, that's
Same
right.
floor, yeah, which is
That
kind
is
of, I find
interesting.
that kind of funny. There's also running is Craig Kelly, incumbent.
Mhm.
Elon Levy, who's a challenger, actually recently gained his U.S. citizenship. He's originally
Uh-huh.
from Belgium.
Right.
He's also the person who filed the open meeting law complaint that I mentioned in the last half hour
Oh,
against
okay,
some of
he
the
was
incumbents.
All right.
There's Mayor David Marr, who also, of course, a city councilor, is seeking
Mhm.
re-election. Paul Mahoney is from out in, I think, very western edge of the city.
Mhm.
Former, now retired firefighter Paul
Hmm.
Mahoney is seeking a city council seat. Councilor Nadeem Mazin, who is also an incumbent.
Mhm.
Incumbent Mark McGovern, formerly of the school committee, but he was elected in 2013 to the city council. Also running for city council is Gary Mello,
Mhm.
a challenger, actually been a challenger for a few elections
Seems that way,
consecutively now,
yeah.
as has Greg
Greg
Morey,
Morey, right.
who's, I believe, a carpenter by trade. The next candidate alphabetically is John Sanzone, who's, I guess, probably the thing he's most known for is advocacy for changes in bicycling infrastructure. He's a little, not entirely, but he's definitely spoken up on some matters about development and whatever, but is very much transit-oriented development, bicycle infrastructure as his primary focus. There's incumbent and former mayor Denise Simmons, seeking re-election. Incumbent Tim Toomey, who's, I guess we can now call him the dean of the class, because he's
Served
been,
the longest?
he has served
Yeah.
the longest by far.
Okay.
Seeking to regain her seat that she lost in 2013
Mhm.
by a very narrow 14 vote, which eventually
Right.
became 20 vote margin in a recount, is Minka van Buzekum.
Right.
She served one term until, but was defeated in the 2013 election. There's also Romaine Waite, who
He's
also,
a newcomer.
he's a newcomer. And James Williamson, who has run as a challenger, I don't know, maybe his 4th or 5th time, I'm not sure which.
Mhm.
right? So those are the city council candidates. Do you want to take a look at the school committee ones?
Yeah, let me scroll down.
I mean, I'm going to sort of say straight away that I know a fair amount about what goes on these days with city council matters.
Right,
I'm relatively clueless about
right.
what goes on.
You can't go to that many meetings.
You can't go to that many meetings. I think the hot topic right now with the school committee is the fact that they're on the verge of, they're down to 3 candidates for who will be the new school superintendent.
Oh, is he leaving?
Jeff Young is leaving, I think, sometime middle of next year.
Okay,
So they want to
he
have the new
forgot that he
person in
announced
place.
it. Okay.
So there, I believe
Interesting.
they've narrowed it down to 3 candidates. So
Now, do they ever have public meetings on that, or is that totally?
yes, actually.
They do?
Oh yeah, and I believe there's one coming up this week. It just I didn't
Really?
have yeah, I think so. I just didn't have time
During
to
an
write it
election
down.
time, they're having a meeting?
They have actually promised that they're going to make the selection before the election. So
Really?
yeah, really.
But who's
I don't know whether
trying to
that.
go- all right.
I don't know. I don't know whether that makes it more of an election topic or less.
I have heard nothing. Well,
Yeah.
I shouldn't say I don't have a kid in school anymore, so I don't really follow
Yeah.
it that much.
So
Okay.
the school committee candidates are, and I
Yes.
hope I get the names right. I think it's Monica
That sounds good to
Bo-
me. Yeah.
Bowman
All right.
is a challenger running for school
Right.
committee.
Okay.
Pia Sisternino, also challenger running for school
Okay.
committee. Incumbent Fran Cronin, who was elected 2 years ago to the school
Right.
committee, is
For the
seeking
first
re-election.
time, right?
Yes.
Yep.
There's challenger Jake Crutchfield, challenger Emily Dexter. The dean of the
Yeah, right.
school committee
Right.
is Freddie Fantini,
Sure.
seeking re-election again. Richard Harding has now been on the school committee for more than a decade,
Really?
seeking re-election. I believe he first arrived in 2001 election.
Wow.
Alechi Cadete he ran in
Is he?
2013 and he's running again as a challenger this
Okay.
year. There's also incumbent Kathleen Kelly, who's seeking re-election, who was elected 2 years ago. Patty Nolan, I think, was elected in
Yeah, she's been
2003 or
Right.
5, one of those two.
Yeah.
So she's scored just as Leland Chung got the most votes, most number 1 ranking votes
Right.
in the 2013 election. Patty holds that distinction
Huh.
for school committee.
Okay.
There's also David Weinstein, who lives up in the Cambridge Highlands part of the city, Normandy Avenue.
Yes.
David, I believe he works at Brandeis University, and he's a challenger seeking election
Okay.
to the council.
I just
to the
did
school
my
committee.
limited math because you're the expert. Is there somebody not running again? Because I only
Yes.
count 5 incumbents.
Yes, we're going to sort of try and come back to us here.
Okay.
There's the one is Mervyn Osborne is the one
Oh,
incumbent
right.
on the school committee who is not seeking re-election.
So there is, because I was wondering, there's so many, new people running, so there is an open seat.
Yeah, and it was actually it's interesting because Mervyn actually pulled papers as though he was going to run,
Right.
and then just right toward the end chose not to. A lot of people felt he wasn't going to run,
Yeah.
but because so I think a lot of the new candidates emerged because they thought, well, okay, we're gonna have a shot here because it's an open seat. And open seats almost always bring new candidates.
Of course, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah,
so
I think-
that's interesting.
Was it
Huh.
last in 2013
Yeah.
on the council there were 3 open seats
Wow.
and 4 new faces elected, right?
Yeah.
So, open seats actually create a little more opportunity not only
Sure.
to fill that seat but also to create a little chaos in the ballot distributions, so that there's always an
So in
increase.
the last election for city council, was there an open seat? I don't think there was.
There were
One-
for this last city council there
yes,
were
there were.
3 open
That's
seats.
right. That's right.
Right.
It's Marjorie.
Henrietta Davis, Marjorie
Henry
Decker, and
Who was the other?
I'm forgetting.
Was
anyway.
it 3?
I think there were 3, and then there were 4 new faces. Yeah.
Wow.
It's relatively rare that you have that much turnover, but
Right.
that's exactly what happened.
Huh.
So anyway, so that brings
we
us to
have
this
the-
year.
yeah,
We have this
so-
election
So
coming up
let's
here.
talk about the slates.
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting phenomenon that's happened. Back in the old days, even going back to 1941, there were slates because of the way we'll maybe next week we'll get into some of the
Okay.
real machinery about
why they
proportional
yeah.
representation
Oh, right.
elections and ranked choice voting and all of that. But there's a benefit or I should say there can be a benefit in running as a organized group of candidates, so that if some of your candidates either have more votes than they need, then those surplus ballots might help to elect others on your slate.
Again, under a PR
Under-
system, which we'll go into more next week.
That's right.
It is, we're unique.
More often than not, in the old Cambridge Civic Association days, they ran a
Right.
slate pretty much.
CCA.
Yeah, CCA
Yeah.
from 41 on, though it went by different names in some years. Like I think in the late 70s it was called the Cambridge Convention.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, these some obscure facts.
Yeah,
I got a million of them.
that I don't remember. Well, I was here then, but I don't
No,
remember.
they did. I think they called it Cambridge Convention because rather than having like a little
Yeah.
closed door meeting of the board of directors where they went into
Right.
some hidden
Right.
little back room and smoked a few
Yeah.
cigars and said these are the guys, they actually did more of a convention style where it was
Huh.
more of an open meeting.
Okay.
So it went by a different name. There was another one, Sandra Graham, put together, or
Oh,
she was
yeah.
part of what was called the Grassroots Organization,
Oh, yes.
or GROW, GRO.
Jeez.
But then eventually she was a CCA candidate in future
Right.
years. So it was something that was kind of part of things. But, you know, the CCA, for all intents and purposes, kind of began to fade away as
Right.
when rent control ended. They had put so many
Ah,
eggs in that one
That's a
basket.
good point, right, and
You
that was
know,
what, 80?
94 was the
94.
election. They continued to endorse candidates all the way through, I think, 2001.
Huh,
But at that point, it was more pro forma.
yeah.
So I think some people have been wanting to do slates for
Right, 'cause
various
there hasn't really
purposes
been
since.
any since then.
No, I think 2 years
Yeah.
ago there was a little mini slate of
Yeah.
Dennis Carlone, Nadim
Oh, right,
Mazen,
yes.
and Janicki House.
Right,
They called
That's
themselves
right.
the Clean Slate,
oh,
Right.
boy, that's.
which always it's sort of like, whoa, what, the rest of us are dirty?
Dirty?
What's
Yeah,
that?
really,
Right.
clean
But
slate, yeah,
I
we have
think
no
it was really,
ties
it's
to-
like,
yeah,
yeah,
all
we're,
new, we
we're
don't
it's
have
a
ties
fresh
to-
start. I
yeah,
think
fresh
is,
start,
that's probably what they were
Yeah.
trying to convey.
should've
And
been the fresh.
it wasn't a huge effect. I
Yeah.
think ultimately, though, if you did look at the way the ballots
Yeah.
from Janicki House transferred when
Sure.
she didn't win, but when
But
her
votes
ballots,
counted,
they
yeah.
tended to feed the other two
Yeah,
candidates on that
Dennis.
slate, rather than some of the other candidates
Sure.
that they might otherwise have gone to.
Right.
So I think
So
that
it's crucial.
I don't know if it's crucial.
Well,
but
no, I
if-
mean, in terms of how you rank and.
yeah,
I
if
don't
there
know if
are
the slate's
slates,
crucial,
you should
but,
do that. So.
yeah.
So I think people became enamored of the slate idea. The way I understand it, and again,
Hmm.
correct me if I'm wrong, was that the Cambridge Residents Alliance, which is, you know,
When
they,
did that come about? As a
well, you know, I
group?
say one thing, they say another
Okay.
thing, but basically it was when there was some ideas floated about building thousands of housing units in Central Square on
Right.
parking lots. That kind of when they really started to become a
Okay.
little more noticed. They
Mhm.
didn't like that idea.
Yeah,
So anyway, they have a lot of other issues as well.
Mhm.
But what happened is that there was some meeting maybe within the past year where they pretty much the way I wasn't at the meeting, but I heard
Yeah.
they pretty much projected up on the wall and said, these are the candidates these are the incumbents we're gonna get.
okay, I didn't know
Right.
that, okay.
Oh yeah, and
Alright.
so there was talk about putting together a slate of candidates, and the word was all around like, oh, they were recruiting candidates to put on a slate.
Yeah,
I've heard, oh, we need to get somebody out of East Cambridge. We need this,
Uh-huh.
we did that. Okay, that's how you make a slate. So that's a good thing. So what happened in response to that is that some of the incumbents, who quite honestly do not particularly get along so amicably with two of the city councilors, Nadim Mazen and Dennis Carlone, who were supported by the Residents Alliance, they decided to put together a slate of incumbents. And and that was
although it
called.
was open to other people.
It was open, yeah. But the
But it
thing
happens
is,
to be all incumbents.
it happens to be,
Yeah.
and, you know, and honestly, it was done for practical reasons. So
Yeah.
they call that the unity slate,
Right.
right? Now, what happened even before that was announced is that Nadim Mazen
Mhm.
actually, on his own, got together with some of the people he spends time with and
Mhm.
put together a slate all of their own.
Yeah.
They think they called it themselves the Slate for Cambridge.
I'm not sure, I went to one of the forums, but I
Yeah,
didn't see
us
it, but
insiders,
yeah.
we just say, oh, the Mazen slate, right? But so that's actually what characterizes their slate is that, well, he's an incumbent, but there are three other challenges, plus Jake Crutchfield on the school committee is part of that. So it's Mariko Davidson, Nadim Mazen, Romaine Waite, and John Sanzone, who happen to be the four youngest candidates.
Wait, they're on a.
That's the slate for Cambridge. That's what,
Huh.
what
Well,
we
then
call
there's
the Mazen
another
slate.
slate or something.
There's
like
really
with
three
Mike
entities.
Connolly.
Yeah,
and
we'll get to that.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, okay. I
Right?
didn't know
so
about
I'll
that.
kind of make it quick because
Go ahead, yeah.
We never seem to have enough time. I tell you, just let me
Right.
go for another 3 hours.
All right.
So, Residents Alliance said we're going to do something, but it didn't quite happen right away.
Okay.
So the Unity Slate was formed, but before that, Mazen jumped the gun and got his own group of 4 plus 1 school committee together. And then the Unity Slate was announced, and the Unity Slate consists of, it's 7 incumbents,
Rick Kelly, Dennis.
Benzin Chung,
Denise.
Kelly, Greg Kelly, David Marr, Mark McGovern, Denise Simmons, and Tim Toomey, right? And then eventually the Residents Alliance finally comes around and endorses. They call their endorsed candidates, but they're really a slate, let's face it.
Yeah.
And their slate consists of city councils only, as far as I know.
Right.
Dennis Carlone, which I think was always
Right.
part of the plan. Jan Devereaux was always part of the plan. When Mike Connolly came in as a
Right,
candidate,
he's in there.
right? So
Yeah.
he's then part of that. And
Nadine.
then kind of lucky Nadine Mazen, he's actually on that slate as well, as is Romaine Waite.
So
right.
Romaine Waite's on that slate as
That's
well as
yeah.
that other
I mean,
one
I think most people who follow this we're clear that it's really Carlone, Devereaux, and Connolly maybe as a possibly viable candidate, and then these the other 2 sort of to round it out, you know. So anyway, that's the slate phenomenon, and whether we'll talk more about it next week, I suppose. But it's become a little bit of the talk of the town. My own personal perspective is that slates don't have to mean a thing. They're a utility. They help to facilitate vote transfers in an election. There might be some ideological connection between the candidates, or just a practical connection. You know, in the old days of the Cambridge Tenants Union, they used to have the tenant slate. It was, do you support rent control?
Right.
And that was the tenant slate. It wasn't ideological. It was a single issue. So anyway, we're down to 5 seconds. So until next
5
week,
seconds.
I'll see you then.
Okay. Good night.